Alright, so in this video, I'm not gonna show you how to make the foliage atlas itself. We're focusing on optimizing texture space. Smart UV packing can make a big difference, especially when you're trying to get the most out of every pixel. The approach I'll show you works for any kind of foliage atlas, whether it's AI generated, made in Substance Designer, or hand painted. Later, we'll hop into Photoshop to clean up the textures a bit, soften any harsh edges, and create opacity masks. Quick side note before we dive in. And yeah, let's address the elephant in the room. I wouldn't recommend using AI generated images straight out of the box. They're usually not varied enough. And a lot of the leaves end up looking like slight variations of the same thing. It's kind of waste of texture space if everything looks too similar. On top of that, AI generated leaves often don't look like the species they're supposed to represent. They tend to resemble more generic or popular plants instead. So if you're aiming for something specific or botanically accurate, definitely double check the references. If you're using AI stuff, at the very least, do a quick paint of or run it through Substance Designer or something similar to break things up and add some extra detail and color variation. All right, let's jump into Houdini. So I'm starting with grid SOP, which I'm using to create the base geometry just for the UVs. I set the Y scale to -1 so it faces the front view properly. Then I plug it into UV Flatten, which unwraps the grid and prepares it for layout. Next, in the trace SOP, I'm using the albedo texture, not the opacity, with the threshold set to 0.1. You might want to tweak that depending on your image, but 0.1 should work well with black backgrounds. After that, I resample the shape, then run it through a poly extrude to give it some thickness. I move it slightly with transform SOP, just enough to cut through the grid cleanly. Then comes the Boolean SOP, which cuts the leaf shape out of the grid based on the extruded trace. To make sure everything looks okay, I add a quick material node just to make sure everything is set up properly with the texture. After that, I set two groups to insulate some of the shapes that are either too repetitive or just not that interesting. I scale them down so they can act as a filler, packing nicely into the gaps between larger, more prominent shapes. Then I throw in a UV layout node to actually pack everything together. What's great about this node is that you can pack geometry into a specific bounding region. In this case, it's the same grid we used for generating the UVs. Make sure to set the UV attribute as P, both in the main settings and under the pack into islands from second input section. There are a few key settings that can improve the packing efficiency, but they'll also slow down your node to network, namely island rotation step, iterations, and search resolution. I usually set the rotation step to around 5 degrees. As for search resolution, crank it up only at the end when everything else is ready because it can really bog things down. Also, make sure your island padding is set up properly so there is enough space between the leaves, especially useful if you plan to reduce the poly count later. For rendering, just add camera, set the resolution to your target size. I'm using 124 by 124 here. Move the camera so it frames the whole grid. The right distance should be around 1.207 if you're using a default setup. Switch to the output context, drop in flipbook node, hit render, and make sure the leaves are visible in the viewport. Then go to File, Save As, pick your location, and I'm saving it as a PNG, and it's pretty much done. You've now got a neatly packed texture along with the geometry ready to use. What if you want leaf cards for something a bit more low poly? No worries, we can tweak the setup for that. The process is pretty similar. After cutting the leaves from the grid, I split them into individual preams. It might look like a lot of work, but there's a handy little script expression I use that grabs the number after the dash to delete the right prims. Once it's set up for one, you can just alt drag to duplicate the node as many times as you need. Then I quickly align all the leaves horizontally, super easy to do in this setup. I merge everything back and loop of the leaf attribute. For each leaf, I create a grid that matches size and add it to a group called bounding cards. I also set the alpha attribute, 1 for the leaves and 0 for the cards, just so things stay clear. Then I copied the leaf attribute onto the cards so they match their corresponding leaves. All of this goes into the same packing network we used earlier. This time I used the leaf attribute to create size variation groups, but the rest of the setup stays mostly the same. The one big change is in island rotation step, which I bump to 90 degrees. Anything lower won't make much difference here and will only slow things down. Also, don't forget to set the island attribute to leaf, so the UV layout knows not to split the leaves from the cards. For rendering, same deal, same resolution, just change the file name so you don't overwrite the previous bake. After rendering, I isolate the cards by selecting the bounding cards group in the blast node, set to no delete not selected. I also remove the alpha attribute since we don't need it anymore. Then I run the same Boolean operation as before, but now we're transferring UVs to the card geometry. Reapply the material, this time using the new texture we just baked for the cards. I do the same split prim trick for adjusting transforms, but I rename the first node to something like leaf card, so things stay organized and naming stays clean. After that, I match everything and move it to the world origin, and that's it. If you need more geometry for your cards, you can generate individual bounding regions per leaf, making sure each one keeps the same leaf attribute. All right. So here in Photoshop, I've got the PNG texture we created earlier. First, I'm going to duplicate the main leaf layer just to keep the original intact. Then I'll create two new layers. I fill one with black using the paint bucket tool and the other with a dominant color picked from the leaves themselves. Next, I go back to the duplicated leaf layer and use the object selection tool to grab the area between the leaves. I expand the selection by 5 pixels and apply a Gaussian blur. 5 pixels should be enough so to soften the edges nicely. Now on the second layer, I select the same in-between area and invert the selection. I fill that with white, which gives us a clean base for an opacity mask. And that's pretty much it. We've packed the texture, cleaned it up in Photoshop, made an opacity mask, and set up the cards for local usage. If you found this helpful, feel free to leave a like or drop a comment. And if you've got any questions or ideas for future videos, let me know. The project files are available for free on my Gumroad. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching.